I know it's felt like an eternity since the last major update for Arma Reforger, so I imagine there's a lot of people disappointed to see that only suppressors are being delivered from the roadmap today. Honestly, this feels like a stability patch laying the groundwork for something much bigger to come, sort of like the 1.095 update did back in February. And the additions in this update have some pretty big gameplay implications too. Even though Arma Reforger in its current state provides one of the most immersive, large-scale Milsim experiences next to Arma 3, as with any complex system, there's areas where the experience can fall a bit short. Communication and intense firefights can be a little clunky, people running around with huge backpacks full of 70 kilograms of gear looks a bit silly, and explosives don't always deliver the punch they should, among other things. So today, let's break down how the 1.2.1 update addresses these issues and more. First up, I think we need to discuss the new tutorial in this update, which introduces facial animations and gives us a taste of the different narratives that can be created within Arma Reforger now. It's actually very well done and teaches new players just about everything they need to know about having a successful time in conflict. I've actually made a video about what hints this tutorial might give us about Arma 4, which you can find in the description of this video. Secondly, another headline feature making its way into this update is that head tracking is said to be officially supported now. How well does it work? No idea, because I use eye tracking. But there's actually some good news here too, since the eye tracking software now officially supports OpenTrack, and it works quite well. However, there's still some noticeable delay/latency, so here's hoping that BI implement eye tracking next. Also worth mentioning is that the control scheme for controllers has changed once again, but there's a legacy option you can switch to in the settings. Up until now, cycling between channels for squads and platoons felt a bit awkward, and this new update streamlines this process. Now with a simple double tap of caps lock on PC, you can now quickly switch between your squad and platoon channels, making on-the-fly communications much smoother. Long-range radio communication is now simplified too. Just press Ctrl plus caps lock on PC and you'll switch back and forth to using your long-range and short-range radios, making backpack radios actually more useful outside of using them as spawn points, because now you can have a dedicated channel for communicating between special squads such as Logi or helicopter transport. In terms of communication, another big issue has been addressed. Previously, players could still broadcast on the radio while unconscious. It was immersion breaking and gave players a bit of an unrealistic advantage. Thankfully, this has been fixed. Now, when you're down, only proximity chat is available, keeping the battlefield experience grounded in realism while still giving players the option to communicate in the game, without being able to give away tactical information to your team. So, how many times have you tried to join a server only to see the dreaded server full message? Before, it was a game of luck where you'd spam join and hope to grab a spot before somebody else. With update 1.2.1, that frustration is gone, theoretically. It's a bit ironic that none of the servers on the experimental branch ever got full enough to test this feature for bugs, but now you can join a server queue and wait your turn to enter. Servers can even customize the size of the queue, so depending on the server settings, you might be waiting behind a handful of players or a few dozen. But the key here is that you're not spamming refresh anymore. This update also introduces a wider range of modern bullets, such as the 7N10 and 7N22, the M855A1 and M995, SP5 and 6, and more. These will give modders more options in customizing modern arsenals and further deepen the game's ballistics systems. More on that in a bit. Explosives have always been part of the battlefield, but in many cases, they didn't quite deliver the destruction you'd expect. With this update, a portion of blast damage delivered without trace at close range has been added, making explosives more lethal in close quarters. Not only that, now explosions can pass through surfaces depending on the material, meaning cover is no longer as safe as it used to be. And for those of you who love blowing up tanks and vehicles, which who doesn't, heavy explosives like AT mines now deal significantly more damage. This change should shift the dynamics of large-scale engagements and give players a real incentive to use these tools more often. Now let's talk about something that's going to make combat feel a lot more visceral, the new terminal ballistics model. With this update, bullets now behave in a far more interesting way. We've all heard the stories of Grandpa getting shot 5 times in the back and still pulling off a sweet 360 no-scope. after swimming 2 miles upriver in World War II, or that dude in the Marine Corps who shot himself in the leg on the firing range to get out of latrine duty but nicked an artery and ended up bleeding to death. And now, Arma Reforger kind of simulates the ballistics of bullets on a deeper level to allow for similar uncertainties. We're talking the simulation of mushrooming, tumbling, and cavitation. Mushrooming occurs when a bullet expands upon impact, increasing its diameter and causing more damage to soft targets like soldiers. Tumbling refers to the bullet rotating unpredictably after hitting a target, which increases tissue damage as it travels through the body. And finally, cavitation creates a temporary cavity in soft tissue from the pressure wave of the bullet, further amplifying the trauma. These additions are intended to make the ballistic system even more realistic, ensuring that every shot has a different impact based on where it hits, the ammo type, and the target's material. But it's not just the ballistics that have evolved. So has the AI. Previously, the AI would often charge at an objective in a straight line, making them quite predictable. But now, when attacking or investigating, they'll favor side paths over the shortest or most direct routes, adding a layer of unpredictability to firefights. AI soldiers also now adapt their suppressive fire based on the estimated threat. This means that the higher the threat level, the more intense the suppressive fire will be, making combat against AI feel even more realistic and forcing you to stay alert. Personally, I'd like to see the AI act a little bit more like human players by suppressing or panicking with full mag dumps into an area and waiting out their shots for the moment a known target peeks out from cover. AI driving has also seen improvements. Previously, they had major issues with obstacle avoidance, leading to movement failures. This has been significantly improved, so expect smoother AI navigation around crossroads, allowing AI commanding and supply convoys to be a more viable option for solo players. Suppressors have finally made it into the game for those of us who prefer a stealthy approach. Without suppressors, your shots could be heard from pretty far away, making noise discipline a critical aspect to engagements, because you can fire a shot and everyone knows where you are. That changes in this update. Suppressors now reduce the sound of gunfire beyond 300 meters or so, making long-range engagements much stealthier. It doesn't make you completely inaudible, but it does make you a lot harder to track, especially when you're in concealment. For players who love to sneak around the battlefield, this opens up a new world of tactical opportunities, which is everybody, so expect to see entire armies consisting of nothing but Special Forces operator main characters, just like it was in 1989. Though, not gonna lie, they are pretty awesome actually. In earlier patches, dismantling enemy structures, especially behind enemy lines, was a key tactic. Taking down radio antennas could completely disrupt an enemy's ability to coordinate or defend an objective, giving your team a massive advantage, which in my opinion added a lot of strategic depth to the game. Then Bohemia disabled this, because honestly, it did become a huge problem. But with update 1.2.1, this ability is back, kind of. Now, you can only dismantle structures at bases you're actively capturing. This brings back some of that strategic depth that's been lost, without making it too easy to exploit. And also gives players something more to do beyond hiding on the edges of the cap zone, because removing structures will reduce the time it takes to cap a base. Okay, so let's talk about scopes real quick. Up until now, aiming with scopes in Arma Reforger forced your field of view into a full zoom. It was functional, but it didn't quite feel natural. That immediate zoom often disrupted your awareness of the battlefield and made things feel a bit rigid. With this update, you no longer have to be fully zoomed in when aiming down the sights and can configure this in the settings. Now, you can appreciate the picture-in-picture scopes more by maintaining your current field of view and keeping your surroundings in perspective. Plus, you can always manually zoom in as needed, allowing for smoother transitions between your scope and the battlefield. And for those of you who appreciate immersion, this update doubles the maximum grass rendering distance from 150 meters to 300 meters, giving a more realistic and visually consistent landscape across longer distances. Though, this is still what it'll look like on the average sweaty competitive gamer's graphic settings, so here's hoping that more can be done with mid and long range textures so that players don't pop out of the environment so easily. Another neat feature is the ability to change your flashlight color to a dimmed red while inspecting it. It's a small but useful addition for players who want to use their flashlights without alerting everyone within 2 kilometers of your presence. And vehicle lights can now be individually destroyed and repaired, making night ops even more challenging. The deployment system has also seen a change. No longer can you deploy at an MHQ with a custom loadout. This ensures a more fair and balanced spawn system, forcing players to adapt to the consequences of failure rather than relying on the convenience of pre-configured kits. Also, let's talk about a small but important fix. Ever tried drawing on the map only to accidentally open a marker's menu? In the heat of battle, that kind of disruption can be disorienting and throw you off your game. Thankfully, this has been fixed in update 1.2.1. Accidental team kills in Arma Reforger are definitely a reality, especially when coordination breaks down or the heat of battle causes some chaotic moments. Game masters and admins weren't exempt from this punishment in these situations either, and I even got banned from my own local server for 15 minutes while trying to test something I was working on. Now that's changed, and admins and game masters will no longer be punished for team killing. This makes sense because game masters are responsible for managing the flow of the game, while admins need the flexibility to manage scenarios without the risk of unintended penalties. And finally, quite possibly my favorite addition to update 1.2.1 is that an actual over-encumbrance system is now in the game and has a much larger impact on movement speed. No longer can you haul a ridiculous amount of gear without consequence. This change forces you to think more carefully about your loadout. Personally, I think it would be good to see this taken a little bit further. For example, beyond a certain stamina and over-encumbrance threshold, it would be nice if players wouldn't be able to vault over obstacles. Or if players are carrying too much weight, reduce the animation speeds for going in between crouch and prone. So despite this being a pretty minor patch, Update 1.2.1 brings a host of changes that are sure to shake things up. I know a lot of mods are probably broken too, but let's be real, modders have had over 1 month to fix their stuff on the experimental branch. So remember that the next time people complain about broken mods. And if you found this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about the update. Which change are you most excited about? And if you have any ideas on how Bohemia could improve the game further, drop them down below. Until next time, this is Ironbeard, and I'll see you on the battlefield.